Have you ever wondered why so many men seem to crave it when a woman kisses them down there? Most people assume it's a raw physical act, something purely about lust. But the truth is far more complex, far more emotional, and far more human than most realize. What if I told you that for many men, this moment isn't about dominance or desire, it's about trust, vulnerability, and the feeling of being truly accepted? That simple act can awaken a part of a man that words rarely reach. Most women believe men want this for their own pleasure, but the paradox is that many men crave it for emotional validation. They're not searching for performance, they're yearning for acceptance, for closeness, for the reassurance that they are still seen and desired. Once you understand that, your entire view of intimacy begins to shift. Because what seems physical on the surface often runs deep into the emotional fabric of love, safety, and connection. When a man allows a woman to touch or kiss him in his most vulnerable place, he's not asking for control. He's asking for trust. It's his way of saying, I need to feel accepted. I need to know I'm still desirable. In that moment, he's not performing. He's surrendering. And that surrender only happens when he feels completely safe, safe in her touch, safe in her gaze, safe in her energy. For so many men, that safety is more intimate than anything else. It's not about what she does, but how she does it, the warmth in her tone, the softness of her movements, the love behind her intent. When a woman gives that kind of connection willingly, something in him softens. His body relaxes, his heart opens. He begins to see her not just as a partner, but as someone who truly sees him, flaws and all. That's why for many men, this moment means so much more than sex. It becomes an emotional affirmation, a reassurance that they're still wanted. For women, especially those over 50, understanding this truth can be profoundly empowering. Because once you realize it's not about performance, it's about presence, you stop trying to please, and you start connecting. You're no longer acting out of obligation, but from emotional intelligence and confidence. You begin to feel that your sensuality, even now, carries a deeper kind of power, one built on empathy and wisdom. It's not about youth or technique. It's about awareness and connection. And once that awareness takes root, you begin to see a side of your partner, and yourself, that's been hidden for years. What makes this even more fascinating is that science backs it up. Inside the male brain, physical pleasure and emotional bonding are intertwined. When a man experiences affection and pleasure, his body releases dopamine, the pleasure chemical, and oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that builds trust and emotional safety. This oxytocin creates a sense of calm, love, and closeness. So when a woman shows genuine affection, even through something as intimate as a kiss in that private place, she's triggering emotional warmth deep inside him. His body doesn't just feel stimulation, it feels acceptance. That's why so many men describe feeling wanted or seen after such moments. It's not a confession of lust. It's a confession of longing, to be chosen, to belong. For women over 50, this changes everything. You begin to realize that when he seeks physical connection, he's also seeking reassurance, just as you do. His vulnerability mirrors yours. And when both of you understand that, intimacy evolves into something deeper, more soulful. Because what happens in that space between two people isn't just about the body, it's about emotion, safety, and mutual recognition. Many women reach their 50s or 60s believing that sensuality fades with age. They whisper, I just don't feel sexy anymore, as if time has taken something from them. But sensuality doesn't disappear. It matures. It waits for you to rediscover it. When you start to see intimacy not as a task, but as emotional connection, something powerful awakens inside you. You stop seeing it as performance and begin to see it as communication. Men aren't seeking perfection, they're seeking presence. And presence is something mature women hold effortlessly. You've lived. You've learned patience, tenderness, and truth. That is your strength. When women rediscover their own energy this way, everything changes. One woman in her late 60s once said that when she stopped worrying about how she looked and focused on how she felt, her confidence returned, and her partner noticed it instantly. Confidence, after all, is magnetic. When you connect from a place of calm and authenticity, intimacy becomes less about doing and more about being. You rediscover the joy of your body and your power to give and receive love with equal grace. And when you see how deeply emotional and vulnerable your partner truly is beneath his strength, you begin to meet him on a new level, one of trust, curiosity, and empathy. Men, too, feel deeply exposed during moments of intimacy, though they rarely say it. Society teaches them to be strong, to hide their softness. But in those private moments, that mask falls away. When a man allows you close like that, he's giving you something precious, his unguarded self. It's a form of trust that says, I feel safe with you. And when that trust is met with care rather than pressure, something beautiful happens. Two people stop performing and start truly connecting. Because intimacy, at its deepest level, is not about control. It's about surrender, from both sides. And that's where true emotional connection begins. There's a quiet misconception many women carry, especially as they get older, that giving pleasure somehow means giving away their power. I've heard it countless times, women saying, it feels like something I do for him, not for me. But the truth is, when intimacy comes from choice rather than expectation, it becomes one of the most powerful expressions of confidence and self-awareness a woman can experience. Giving pleasure doesn't make you submissive. It means you are confident enough to guide the experience, to connect on your own terms, and to own the space you share. When you choose to give from a place of authenticity and curiosity, you become not just a participant, but the energy that sets the tone. You're not losing control, you're leading through love, and that's real power. I remember a woman in her 50s who once said she had avoided certain kinds of intimacy for decades because she thought it was undignified. But later in life, after finding a partner who made her feel seen and safe, she allowed herself to experience it again. Her words were simple but profound. When I finally stopped seeing it as an obligation and started seeing it as an act of love, I felt free. That's the kind of shift every woman deserves, to realize that your sensuality has never left you, it's just been waiting for permission to return. When you give pleasure willingly, not because you must, but because you choose to, it becomes something sacred, a creative, emotional exchange that deepens trust and connection for both of you. Intimacy at this stage of life isn't about technique or youth. It's about emotional truth. When you give from a place of strength, you begin to notice something extraordinary. Your body, your mind, and even your hormones start responding in kind. Because touch isn't just pleasure, it's medicine. When two people connect with emotional safety and affection, the body releases oxytocin, the hormone of love, calm, and connection. It lowers stress, stabilizes mood, and strengthens your heart. For women over 50, these moments of closeness can even help balance hormones, improve sleep, and increase overall vitality. One woman once told me that when she began reconnecting with her partner after years of distance, she started sleeping better, smiling more, and even noticed her skin glowing again. She said, "It's better than vitamins." And in a way, she was right. When you feel desired and emotionally safe, your entire body comes alive. Your brain produces serotonin, your heart relaxes, and your confidence blossoms. Intimacy, when rooted in love and trust, doesn't just strengthen relationships, it strengthens your health, your spirit, and your sense of self. And here's the most important truth of all, understanding desire is one of the deepest acts of love you can give yourself and your partner. Too often, women are taught to silence their own curiosity, to give affection without ever exploring what it means. But real love begins when you start to see desire not as something to control or fear, but as something to understand. When you recognize that your partner's longing isn't about ego but about connection and reassurance, something inside you softens. You stop seeing physical closeness as performance and start seeing it as communication, an unspoken language of empathy, trust, and understanding. One woman who had been married for decades once told me that after years of silence, she and her husband simply began to talk again, honestly, gently, without judgment. She said, "We didn't fix anything dramatic. We just started listening to each other. And suddenly, we found our spark again." That's the quiet power of understanding. It doesn't demand, it invites. It doesn't perform, it connects. When you begin to see intimacy as a form of emotional communication, Every touch, every breath, every moment becomes a message. I see you. I choose you. You're safe here. That's what mature love feels like, steady, grounded, and full of life. For women over 50, this realization can reignite something long forgotten. It reminds you that love doesn't fade, it deepens. That desire doesn't die, it transforms. It becomes calmer, wiser, and infinitely more meaningful. Because when you understand that intimacy isn't about youth or perfection but about being present and emotionally awake, you unlock a level of connection that's richer than anything from your younger years. In the end, understanding desire isn't about learning new tricks or trying to recapture the past. It's about learning new truths, about yourself, your body, and your partner. What happens in the body is only a reflection of what happens in the heart. Touch, breath, and closeness are simply the ways love continues to speak, even when words fall short. You've earned the freedom to see intimacy for what it truly is, not a duty, not a performance, but a sacred exchange of care, curiosity, and warmth. When you allow yourself to love without fear and receive without guilt, you transform not just your relationships, but the way you see yourself. So, remember this, every touch, every kiss, every act of affection has the power to heal, not just your partner, but you. Because when love is expressed through understanding, it doesn't fade with age. It deepens. It becomes quieter, steadier, and infinitely more beautiful. This is the art of mature desire, the calm, magnetic energy that keeps two hearts reaching for each other again and again, no matter how many years pass.